Well, hi everyone. I'm John Retlin with a review of two Netflix originals that I just watched, The Old Guard and Lost Bullet. One of these was not all that good, and the other was a generic yet fun French action flick. So, like any multi-movie review that I do, there will be spoilers throughout. So, let's start off with the one I didn't like, The Old Guard. It comes to us from the director of Love and Basketball, which I actually really enjoyed. And she's done other work too, but that's a film that stuck out to me where I'm like, okay, you know what? Hey, she's directing an action movie. Maybe it won't be all that bad. This is about Charlize Theron playing the character of Andy, who is an immortal, except when she's not, leading a group of other immortals, except when they're not, mercenaries that are, for hire. They're, they're taking jobs and everything to save people, to do the right thing and use their immortality for good and push the world to, a better place. And maybe the people they save will go on to do great things like they've done throughout history. Seriously, this is the plot they're going with. Unfortunately, it just wasn't very good. It reminded me of What Happened to Monday, which is a film I actually reviewed earlier this year that I did not enjoy. That was more post-apocalyptic and having to do with, people having to live their lives in secret and everything. And there's this, foreboding, like, government, this overlording government that wants to, take them and do experiments on them or whatever, wants to figure out why this is going on. They want to basically control the entire world. Well, in this movie, because they're immortals and this one guy finds out about it, this one, doctor that wants to, get their genetic code and figure out, use them for genetic experiments and everything and figure out how he can help, stop the aging process, stop dementia, that kind of stuff. He wants to use his powers for good, except he's really evil, and so goddamn evil that he doesn't even try to fucking hide it. This movie is painfully generic, which is very unfortunate. I love Charlize Theron. I love her in just about any movie that she's been in, even the stuff where, the movies aren't all that good. She's usually always pretty good. I've loved her since The Devil's Advocate. I loved her in Monster. And even the Aeon Flux, however the fuck you say it, she wasn't all that bad in. Now, was the movie great? No, but generally I love her. And Kiki Lane was pretty good in this as well. Here's the problem. There was no element of danger at all, and the way they explain how, they have their immortality, like Charlize Theron has been around for years and years and years, back to the medieval times, or even maybe back earlier. It's very inconsistent, though, with how it does the whole immortality thing. It's like you keep surviving death or shots or falling off a building or whatever until you don't. And then it just suddenly decides, no, you're not going to be immortal anymore. You're just going to suddenly die from your wounds. And there's no explanation for it. Also, they tell this backstory of her having a friend named Quinn, I think is how they say it, or Quen, I forget exactly it, who... They were friends. They were in lockstep and everything. Andy, Charlize Theron's character, found her, and they were great. They were, fighting battles and everything. But eventually, they were suspected of witchcraft. And instead of being burned at the stake, no, they decide, because they're immortal, they decide to lock this woman, Andy's friend, in an Iron Maiden and put her at the bottom of the ocean. This is going to be important for, something that I talk about in a little bit. And then also, they get, in the very beginning of it, they get this thing where it's like, oh, we have this mission for you. There's this character, Copley, who I recognize the actor. I can't place him right now, but I know he's been in a few things that I've liked. But, a lot of actors have been in a lot of things, and sometimes, stuff gets jumbled up. He tells them, this mission. There are these children that, need to be rescued. Well, then all of a sudden, it turns out to be a shit mission. It turns out to be not true, and their identities are exposed. Somehow they managed to live in secret, yet this one guy was able to figure it out, and then you get the whole thing with this doctor, this genetic guy, Merrick, who wants to, harvest them and figure out their secrets and help humanity and basically sell it to the highest bidder. That's essentially what it is. So there's that, and then there's also, wait, how in the world... how in the world did he find out about this? Oh, wait, it's because he's been studying them. So maybe he's not the villain, but this guy's the villain. But it's not the only betrayal we get in this movie. Because then a little bit later, literally like 5-10 minutes later after they basically escaped this mission after, coming back from being shot and everything, they start to, they find out that there is this other girl, Nile, played by Kiki Lane, who is a soldier that survives an attack, and basically she realizes she's immortal. So they do all this stuff and everything. They eventually rescue her, or Andy does, within like 10 minutes. Like within 10 minutes of finding this stuff, they suddenly rescue her. And again, there's no fucking element of danger. Yes, everybody seems to be having fun with it. Charlize Theron is at least, not playing down to the material, which isn't very much. But as things go on, it turns out that two of them get captured, and oh, wait, you need to capture all four of them or whatever, because this guy wants to do these experiments. And wait, how'd they get captured? Oh, it turns out that the one guy that's been with Andy the longest, character of Booker, betrayed her. Curse your sudden but inevitable betrayals, and heaping all this stuff on it. I just didn't like this movie because it was so obvious where it was going. Oh, you're suddenly not immortal. Andy's suddenly not immortal. Yet she somehow managed to survive all these other explosions and bullet wounds and other stuff and everything, despite not being immortal anymore. It's very inconsistent. The effects are not very good. And then, remember that woman that I mentioned earlier? So after all this stuff gets solved, and that guy Merrick gets like dispatched by being tossed through a car by, Niall just jumping, and absolutely destroying him, which actually was kind of funny. They decide to get that guy Booker away. Just, nope, you're going to be alone for 100 years and then maybe we'll reconvene. Provided that your immortality doesn't suddenly vanish, because again, it's very inconsistent. And then that character I mentioned that was put in the Iron Maiden and then launched into the ocean or the sea or something. Okay. The pressures of the ocean would kill anything except for, these creatures that we don't even really want to talk about because they look very scary. Ever seen that underwater footage where they put, the cameras way down and everything and all that? You ever seen that shit? I don't want to go there, and I don't know how anybody in a goddamn Iron Maiden survives. Now, yes, maybe don't think too much into it because they're immortal mercenaries, except when they're not. But then Booker's just suddenly shows up. He's drunk after some time or whatever. Oh, hey, it's nice to see you again. And it's the woman that was in the Iron Maiden. No explanation. Obvious sequel hook. Didn't like it. F. It gets a goddamn F. So let's move on to something that I sort of liked. Lost Bullet. Basically, there is a petty criminal named Lino Lino, and it's a French movie, so I'm probably going to mispronounce this shit. He is a brilliant mechanic, but after a bad robbery with his partner Quentin, he basically is put on the police task force to help soup up the cars and make them go fast. They gots to go fast. And he kind of befriends this one cop that sees something in him and grants him an early release. So it's like it starts next week. And then, of course, that goes tits up because Lino finds his, former partner Quentin after being, released from jail. Oh, it turns out that he's fallen in with a bad crowd and there's some corrupt cops, and the corrupt cops shoot this good cop, and the bullet's lodged in the dashboard. And basically, Lino has to find a way to prove his innocence. The thing about this movie that intrigued me was the fact that it basically showed a lot of car chase sequences in the trailer. Now, I will say this. It's not a great movie. It's probably not even a good movie, but it has its moments where, okay, hey, it's at least entertaining. There's a subplot where he's got, this love interest that's also a cop. Because, of course, he has to have a fucking, love interest. The movie's breezy enough at least, and the opening, car chase sequence is actually pretty good. And some of the action sequences aren't that bad. Now, it is painfully generic and painfully obvious where they're going with it. And of course, he eventually finds a way to get the car because they burned the dirty cops burned the car, but maybe didn't burn the car. They had the bullet in, which is stupid. Why wouldn't you just burn the car? You decided not to burn the car because there's no way this guy is going to find it, and then he finds it, and because he's such a brilliant mechanic, he manages to take them down and everything, and that's basically what it is. That's pretty much your lot right there. The last car chase sequence actually is pretty damn well done. Nothing in this movie is particularly bad. It's just it had potential to be great and just hit the above mark of being okay, where it just ended up being decent. Now, there's not a whole lot of substance to these characters. There really isn't. But again, the chase sequences are at least fine. It is kind of funny where he gets the car back to the garage that he worked in, where the police chief sees it, and the car is literally on fire because the villain cop threw a grenade on there that basically blew it up. And the trunk was on fire and the fire was catching, and his innocence ends up getting proven. It's just really silly how this movie, it's breezy, it's pretty generic, but it's overall not bad. So I'm going to say C+, because at least the chase sequences were fine. And this movie was much more expedient than The Old Guard, because the problem with The Old Guard is you could have cut out 20 minutes of that movie, not miss shit, and it didn't need to be over 2 hours. So anyway, agree, disagree with what I said? Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Ritlin. I'll see you soon.